Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, September 6, 2023. This is a school board workshop. The time is 1 p.m. There are 5 items on the agenda. First, there will be a discussion on job descriptions, then a presentation about student engagement, followed by a presentation regarding Narcan in the schools. Then a discussion about legislative priorities, and finally, the agenda review of the September 6th action meeting. We'll begin with job descriptions. Dr. Bernier, would you like to?
I would, sir. I'd like to introduce 2 people. We have our acting CHRO, who's a consultant for us, Hillary McLean, and Executive Director, Mr. Dodig, who's here to review and provide for you an update regarding some job descriptions we had provided before, made corrections to, and now back for final approval before bringing them for a vote.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so the 2 job descriptions that you provided feedback on was the Chief Human Resources Officer, and we made the appropriate additions to the job description. You can see the edited version there in your board docs. And I think the biggest thing that we addressed was the idea of career development and making sure that they are taking their career development seriously, and that's part of their job description to continue to stay on best practices, as well as the idea of beefing up the need for their understanding and knowledge around technology for HR systems. So that's been addressed.
If I may, there were 2 other areas I believe that we discussed, and one was related to some Scribner errors, but also very specific 2 lines. One was related to policy making versus the individual making policy. They are now, if you'll look at the lines carefully, they are now a member of a policy making team with the board. We're really clarifying the aspect that board makes policy and the superintendent and his or her staff then follows it. And then the other one was specific to the mission and vision of our school district. I think in our pronoun world, we're sometimes reticent sometimes of using his or her, and sometimes our staff is inserting the word there. I have talked with all of them that we need to ensure that each student achieves his or her highest personal potential is our vision statement, so when we put it in writing, that is what it is going to say. So I know Ms. McLean probably would have been that in addition, but I think she was hitting the major technical highlights of what the board had discussed.
Yes, that was brought up at the meeting. Yep, we made those changes as well. Then the second job description is Community Learning Center Program Manager. When we presented it last time, it was a coordinator, and in speaking with Terry, who is the school district person that is responsible for this job, she said it's really somebody who's going to manage the program. There was a comment about shouldn't it address before and after school activity. It's not a before and after school activity job. It's through the 21st Century Grant, and it is targeted towards schools that have kids that need extra development and work. So this person's going to manage it. It isn't somebody who's dedicated to before and after school activity. It's 10 hours per week. There are teachers that work with those children that need extra support and help, but it's structured curriculum. So it was changed to a manager, and the job description didn't have other edits from this person, Terry's perspective, who manages this person. She felt like it was sufficient. Connolly, yes.
May I ask a question? Wait, you're saying Terry, are you speaking about grants?
Yes.
Okay, so because on here it says reports to principal or designated administrator, so is that the grants department that they're reporting to, or are they reporting to the principal? Who do they report to then?
They report to the principal. The grant is how the positions are funded.
Right.
Okay.
Right. They do report to that site. Then they work at that site location. There's 6 sites that have this position.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on that one?
Other questions?
No, please continue.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Yeah, that's all we have.
Yep. Thank you.
Dr. Bernier, do you have anything you want to say while they change places here? Or?
I think I could just add that with this approval, then we'll bring both job descriptions forward to a vote. I'm excited about getting the chief human resource position, for lack of a better term, sometimes I refer to it as out on the street, right? We want to get it out into the ether. We want to get it posted not only to our website, but to the other professional websites. So we begin the earnest search while we have great leadership in the executive director and in our temporary CHRO. We're living on borrowed time with our temporary one, and her contractual obligation will end at some point. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to utilize this time for us to find other candidates where both Ms. McLean, Mr. Dodig, and other search committee members can be in the process to find us a full-time CHRO and provide a little bit of transition time between the leadership that is currently in place and the opportunity for the new individual to come on board. So thank you very much for your support of this. Again, you've asked for some changes in the Human Resource Division. The team currently standing in the aisle is representative of a lot of people making changes in human resources, and we're excited about the progress that they're making. If you want, Mr. Chair, would you like me to introduce our student engagement team? I'm very excited today to once again reintroduce Dr. Jessica Duncan. She's the Executive Director of Student Services. Along with her today is Kimberly Molhem. She is the Coordinator of Threat Assessment and Student Services. They have a short presentation for you today about academic services and student engagement. Dr. Duncan.
Good afternoon. So, board members, superintendent, we are happy to have a couple of minutes with you today to talk about student engagement. We're going to be talking specifically about two programs, the Sandy Hook Promise, which you have probably previously heard some about. This was a grant that we secured last year, and then also a peer-to-peer mentoring. We're excited about these programs because they're really aligned well with our strategic plan in that we're enhancing a safe learning and workplace culture, and we're strengthening students, family, and community partnerships. We're increasing student voice, choice, and ownership of the learning experience, and I think we are really opening some of our untapped potential, which is our most valuable partner, our students. So as we get started, a little bit about where we are with Sandy Hook Promise. Currently, actually starting today, we're delivering school-wide assemblies at all secondary schools, that's middle and high school. We have representatives from the Sandy Hook Promise program here, and they're talking about the history of the program, helping students to know the signs, what they need to report to an adult or a staff member, and also reviewing the different pieces of the Start With Hello program. Thanks. Then starting the week of the 18th, we have our National Start With Hello Week. And all that week, the schools will be participating in different activities. We have Save Promise Clubs at each secondary, so each middle and high school, and also at some elementary schools. So there was not a requirement for elementary schools to join. Some did on their own accord, but we are excited to look at expanding that program next school year to elementary schools as well. So I'll have Ms. Molhem talk a little bit about the Save Promise Club and one of their activities.
So several schools are already mapping out their week of activities, and they're really excited, and I get the opportunity to work with all of our club advisors and students, so it's an incredible job. One activity, just to give you an example of how simple it is but powerful, one school is handing out to all their students name tags where they have the opportunity to put their name, and their challenge is to go out and just say hello to 3 students or peers that they don't know. Just introduce themselves, kind of knowing more about who's in their building, and then the following day they're going to kind of debrief, how did that activity go, how did it make you feel, did you meet a new friend? So they're very simple activities, but they're everyday an activity that's going to take place at schools, and I know Varsity Lakes has already submitted an incredible plan that their kids are really excited to put together for next week.
And then the final activity we wanted to share with you is one we're especially excited about. Ms. Wellma spent a lot of time working with schools to prepare for our Youth Leadership Safety Summit. That will be taking place at the end of October and beginning of November, and we'll be having students from each middle and high school attending that. And she can provide a little bit more information about that as well.
It's just a great opportunity for each of our club members to come. There's 5 students with their club advisor. They get to come to the Caloosahatchee room for the full day. Save Promise Club advisor from Sandy Hook will be here to kind of facilitate the opportunity for our kids. And it's a great opportunity for them to come and showcase what they're doing in their schools, kind of see what's happening in other schools. They're going to plan out their whole year of different activities that are throughout the national weeks. And like I said, it's just a great opportunity for them to hear, oh, this doesn't happen just in my school, it's also in this school, and just to talk to each other. So that's coming up, like we said, October 31st is our high school and November 1st is our middle school. And just to share some activities, last year was our first year where we just encouraged all of our schools to get registered and create their Save Promise clubs. But we did have some schools that were ready to rumble, and they did activities last year, and it was great. Our first picture up there is actually this year's Harns Marsh Middle did at open house a table, and they were introducing their Save Promise clubs and trying to get some kids excited. I actually got to listen in, and I would say the kids were very excited about it, but I think the parents were more excited. They were like, is this happening everywhere in every one of our schools? They encouraged their kids to join up, so I will be out there this afternoon to kind of hear how that's been going with them. Last year, Riverdale High School, they did promotions during National Say Something Week. I actually went with them, and one day after school, we wrote positive comments on sticky notes. And then the next morning they came in and put a sticky note on every locker. So when the students arrived, they had something positive to start off their day. So it's simple activities, but I think very powerful activities. And it's peer-to-peer, which is great. Another school, Diplomat Middle, last year did during Say Something pledges. The kids came up and they signed the hand where they pledged to say something to a trusted adult. They built a tree in their cafeteria, and they cut out the hands, so the hands were all over the cafeteria for everybody to see. And then Varsity Lakes participated in National Youth Violence Prevention Week, where the students got to sign a pledge, and then the staff actually had their own pledge that they were going to sign as well. So there were the 2 pledge banners held up within the hallway. So they were really excited, and I was really happy to see them kind of jump on board early. So.
And the second initiative is the peer-to-peer mentoring program. So this will be the first time that you're hearing about this program. It is part of an award that was received by the Foundation for Lee County Public Schools, and that was the Consortium Resiliency Award for hurricane response. And there were 4 components to that: a peer-to-peer mentoring, there's a college and career exploration, the SOS program, and then the also the LIST initiative, which is a component of the peer-to-peer mentoring. So we are working collaboratively with the foundation and have selected 2 high schools that we will begin the mentoring program in. So we will be working with Island Coast High School and Lehigh Senior High School. We anticipate or are hoping to have about 15 to 20 mentors per site. And they'll be working quarterly, and then they can switch their mentors if they want new mentors. So right now we're in the process of completing all the paperwork, making sure that all the parents are notified if their students are participating, so that they can know that this is available and either opt in or ask that their student not participate in this. We're also working to train the mentors so that they have the appropriate listening skills. And then also, if one of their mentees comes to them with a topic that needs adult support, that they know how to get that, what topics they need to come directly to an adult for. So we're in the process of that. That's very exciting. And we think that there will be real benefits to that, and look to establish a program that we can move on to other sites potentially in future years. And as a component of that, we had the Listen initiative. So if we had had our meeting last week like we were scheduled, you probably would have seen about 200 students here in the building. That is a rescheduled opportunity, but we have 4 high schools participating: Gateway, Dunbar, Island Coast, and Lehigh Senior. They're scheduled to watch a screening of the movie Listen, and Mr. Ramirez was really instrumental in this work too, that we were able to get the director, Iram Christopher, here to work directly with the students and then do some follow-up activities on the topics, and also have the students go through an active listener training. So our hope is through that active listener training that we will also be able to secure some mentors, since 2 of the participating schools are also our peer-to-peer sites. So at this time, I'd like to open it up to superintendent's comments and board discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Duncan. Board members, just a couple of things. This is about student achievement in a different way. When you think about student achievement, we often think about it in terms of math, science, social studies, language arts, civics, in our normal academic programs. But really, there's a whole aspect to the support and health of a child. And whether they're young children or high school children, it's the opportunity for them to grow and to use peer-to-peer mentoring to work to create environments where the Sandy Hook Promise, part of that is removing anonymity from a school building and really providing a student an opportunity to feel like they belong. The Listen Up, the Listen program, Lee Listens, and the Listen Initiative really had started long before we started talking about Listen Up, Speak Up, or Speak Up, Listen Up, but this really fits into that as well. It's really about how to speak up, and more importantly, how to listen to people when they do. And I think that's sometimes what we have to focus on even more. Speaking up seems to be the easy part of that process. Listening, effectively listening to people, and the opportunity for these high schools to be involved as our first participating high schools will be very exciting. We will get that rescheduled as quickly as possible because we think it's really important. Not only have members of the staff seen it, but I believe also some of the licensed mental health therapists had a screening of it as well in preparation. It will draw out some emotion from our children. And then if you listen to how this was rolled out in a county to the east of us, it really provided a great opportunity for parents then to come in that evening and watch the same thing their student did with their student. And it's from those conversations that really families began to finally have some of the discussions they've needed to be having all along. Again, it's not telling parents what to do, it's providing an opportunity for parents and students to interact in a common way around a common experience, and so often that is the beginning of a dialogue with your child. So that's really what we look for in these processes, and I encourage all of you, as dates have been laid out here, and we know when certain things are occurring, please avail yourself of the opportunity. Dr. Duncan has the full schedule. We have a full list of the school buildings. We can get that information to you so you know where this is going on and when it's going on. And if your schedule permits, as you know, our schools are always open to all of you, and we'd love to have you be a participant and see some of the great work that's going on, in a sense, outside of the classroom, but in support of students' health and making sure that they're prepared fully to be a learner in our K-12 environment. So thank you to the team for the work you're doing, and board members, I look forward to hearing your discussions. Any questions for staff?
Ms. Giovanelli. Excuse me.
Thank you. Hello. So it's really, I've known about this program for many years, and brought it to the attention of the prior administration, and they just weren't quite there ready for it. So I'm excited to see that you guys are doing that. Really excited, actually. And I would love to attend any of the functions at any of the schools. So if we could get a schedule or something like that would help us, because we all have different schedules that one of us can pop in here and there. One of the questions I have would be student advisory. Is there any way that this could be presented at the student advisory, what you're doing, like it's a smaller environment, but I think starting the student with student advisories, they can spread it out through their school, and I think it would be, I don't know, I think it would enhance the excitement more, you know what I mean? One of the questions also I have is elementary schools. I'm just curious what elementary schools chose to jump in on the train.
You're gonna ask. There's about 12. I can send you guys the list. I will say last year, Sunshine Elementary, they did amazing. Their SRO actually jumped in and had a talk with the kids during every lunch period, the full 5 days. The music teacher put together these songs for the kids. The art teacher had the kids making posters, and It was amazing what Sunshine Elementary did, but we do have about 12 to 17 elementary schools that registered, and then I'm going to be working with them throughout this year.
That's awesome, thank you. So for me, I think this is really important, and it's changing the culture of people, because in the technology age right now, the kids are really kind of stuck in that. I've already experienced it with my grandchildren and my own daughter. I have to make her put that phone away. So I think this is going to kind of open that up and bring the conversation back to hopefully the dinner table. So I really appreciate it, and I'm very excited about it, and I support it 100%. So thank you very much.
Any other, Ms. Jada Fleming?
The whole time I was listening to the presentation, I just kept thinking to myself, yes, yes, yes. These are the types of activities that students are going to go home and have conversations with their parents. They might not, unfortunately, talk about the book that they're reading as a class or what the algebra, what they learned in math that day, but these activities are, we talk about promoting and providing a world-class system. This is an all-encompassing part of that, because these are the types of things that students buy into their place that they go to every single day, and this is how they are going to connect. So yes, I'm excited to see where it goes. Hopefully you'll even have more schools jump on board. I am excited about the movie night. I have a question. How are we getting that information for students to view it and then the parents to come back? Is that going out through a text, an email?
It did. So there was a parent permission form that went out, and again, it was scheduled for last week.
Right.
So the schools know the participants from their school, so they made sure that they had information for the students. And then I believe the community may be open. We gave the information to the parents, but is open to other people who would like to join as well. So it's not just limited to the parents.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, wonderful. I thank you so much for the hard work you're doing. I appreciate it.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. Just the 4 schools that were participating, how are they chosen and why are the other ones not participating? I'm just curious on how we got the 4 and there's many more.
So this was a grant through the foundation. So when there was the 2 schools for the peer-to-peer. So they were 2 that participated in the Listen initiative. And then for the other piece, it was not as directly involved with the school selection with the foundation. I'm not sure if we could have that information, or we can get that to you.
We'd be happy to get that information to you. I know that it was specifically assigned to this particular facility where we were going to watch the film, so we were short on size. This will not stop with these 4 schools. The goal is to roll this out to every one of our high schools.
And thank you for that, because I really do believe that this is a great initiative for us to have for the kids. And even just a thought, a lot of times the theaters will allow you to show them there, which is much bigger than what we have here. It's just a thought. And we could include everybody. Thank you.
Ms. Morgan.
So this is tangential to what you were talking about, but when you were talking about peer-to-peer mentoring, I don't think I brought this up before, but my grandson is a kindergartner in a school in Texas, and they have a house program like Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. And so it's a parallel and a virtual, what am I trying to say? It goes up and down and it goes across. So it's a great way for kids to build relationships within their grade, but also relationships with older kids. And I know we do it at Bayshore, and I hear it's very exciting. And I'm wondering if we've entertained the idea of trying to do something like that at the elementary level, because as soon as teaching kids to build relationships with kids within their grade and kids in grades above is something that would carry on to the upper schools. So just throwing that out.
Well, Bayshore deserves a good highlight too. I know we highlighted Sunshine, but let's highlight Bayshore for their houses. They have a sorting container. I don't know what else to call it. And if you've not had the experience of being in it, I can make sure we arrange for everyone on this board to be sorted. I will tell you what the best house is, but then I would be giving it away, and I think my chief of staff would argue that he's in the best house, because we compete against, whenever you go into Bayshore, we look at how our team is doing. So there is structure both vertically,
Right, thank you.
where fifth graders are in the same house as kindergartners, but there's also children contained in each one of the houses in each one of the classrooms. What's really unique about it is how they utilize those team colors and those groupings to sometimes bring houses together within a classroom, and sometimes to ensure that students from each house are in a cooperative grouping as well. I don't know how, at this point, how expansive the idea of is expanding it. I can certainly talk to our two amazing executive directors of the elementary level and get some feedback to you as a board.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Having a grandson at Bayshore. He just got his house the other day, so he was all excited.
That's a good idea.
So I'll have to go there and get sorted pretty soon. I hear that's a fun experience. But anyway, no other questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you,
Great
team.
presentation. All right, our next presentation is on Narcan in schools. I do want to mention, we all have a training device here. Do not take that home. They need those back.
Oh, okay.
And they're limited there. But the rest of the stuff on your thing you may take.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to introduce again Dr. Jessica Duncan, the Executive Director of Student Services, and Willadies Cologne, otherwise known as Wally, our Assistant Director for Health Services. This is a great presentation, but at the same time, a sad one. And it's a statement on what some of our students and administrators and first responders are facing. I'll let certainly the individuals doing the presentation do the better part of the explanation than I do, but we do have a critical opioid crisis in our country, and specifically with some very specific opioids that are absorbed through the skin. It has changed our search procedures for something as simple as, hey, do I mind if you look in your backpack because I heard you might have something today. We used to just ask, is there anything sharp in here that might stick me? We now have to ask another questions and then don gloves before conducting that search, because fentanyl is absorbent, can be absorbed with skin. But there is a tool, kind of like an EpiPen for those individuals who can go into anaphylactic shock due to allergies. There is a tool at our disposal for administrators and other first responders and other individuals in schools and outside of schools to carry, that if a student is exposed or another adult is exposed, there is an opportunity for us to have a first response and potentially save a life. So I'll turn it over to the Health Services Director as well as the Student Services Executive Director for that presentation.
Good afternoon, board members, superintendent. As the superintendent stated, this presentation is about Narcan, and it's something we hope we never have to use, but one thing we're really proud of with our health services department is the fact that they continue to move forward to ensure that our students have access to life-saving measures. Last year, we came to you with information about EpiPens, which are now in our schools. We have new seizure action plans. So again, this is another step to just ensure our students have access to anything they may need in our schools to ensure that they can remain safe and, again, important life-saving measures available to them right in their schools.
So, good afternoon, Superintendent, board members, Attorney Dupree-Bruno. Thank you again for this opportunity to be able to bring this very important topic forward to you guys this afternoon. So, Narcan in schools. So Narcan saves lives. Narcan is a medication that rapidly reduces and reverses an opioid overdose from the likes of heroin, fentanyl, and prescription pain medications such as oxycodone and hydrocodone. Narcan can quickly restore normal breathing to a person if their breathing has slowed or stopped because of an opioid overdose. Narcan should be given to any person who shows signs of an opioid overdose or when an overdose is suspected. Some of those signs and symptoms that we're going to be looking for is limp body, clammy face, blue fingernails or lips, slowed breathing, or stopped breathing. Narcan can and will be given as a nasal spray and can be repeated every 2 to 3 minutes as needed. So as we're administering it, we are calling 911 and waiting for emergency responders to arrive to the emergency in our location. Narcan has no harmful effects if it is administered to an individual that did not have any opioid within their system, okay? So whenever we look at Senate Bill 544, it did go into effect last year, which did make some, the governor did sign this into effect, and it states that a public school may purchase the supply of naloxone. So naloxone is the generic name for Narcan from a distributor, or enter into an arrangement to have that medication on campus in the event of an opioid overdose. Naloxone must be maintained and secured in a location on school premises for the use if someone is experiencing or having a suspected opioid overdose. Narcan nasal spray will be used by trained school personnel and any person who in good faith renders emergency care or emergency treatment for suspected opioid overdose is immune from civil liability under the Good Samaritan Act. We have been working for some time, like Jessica said, Dr. Duncan said, with Lee Health, with other major medications, you know, for life-saving medications. So we did work with them again to see if they could work with us to be able to provide Narcan. So Lee Health has been and will be providing a non-patient specific standing order and protocol for the use of Narcan. The school district will obtain and supply Narcan to all schools and will be responsible for the proper storage and labeling of the medication. We will be identifying every school clinic as the proper location for its storage. Kimmy's Recovery Zone is a local nonprofit organization that will assist our school district in obtaining Narcan. I do want to point out that we do have in our audience Heidi Webb. She is the CEO of Kimmy's Recovery Zone. And she will also be one of our trainers as we continue to move forward with training our staff and health services and administrators. Helping emergency responders obtain support or HEROES is a program at the Department of Health that can provide emergency responders with free naloxone to all emergency responders. And currently some of our agencies have taken advantage of this program. So at your chairs, I did take the liberty of putting 3 items there for you to be able to take a look at and keep some of these items. The first one is a box of 4 milligrams of 2 doses of naloxone. So this is for you to keep and be able to use. Every time that naloxone has to be used, it's 1 dose, so there's 2 doses in each box, but every time a dose has to be given, it's a one-time use, okay? We also included a lanyard so that way you didn't have to open up your box, so once it's open, you know, you're gonna be exposing that open, but we wanted you to take a look at what it looks like. So it's on a lanyard there. And I know that whenever I spoke with Kimmy's Recovery Zone, that's one of the ways that they carry it whenever they have to go out to the field. So, and it's very easy for them to be able to access it, open it up, and it's there ready to use. And it does give you some step-by-step instructions, and it even lets you know what the expiration date on it is. And I also included a trainer because I wanted you to see how easy it is to administer Narcan. So once you open up your package and you've identified that the individual is having an overdose or you suspect suspect that they're having an overdose, you're going to open up your packet. Hopefully you'll have gloves, but if you don't, you're going to do the best you can. And you're going to put this little part here inside of their nostril. You're going to pick either side, and you're just going to go ahead and just push down, okay? You're able to repeat this dose every 2 to 3 minutes until they either respond or emergency responders are able to take over. If you need to give a second dose, you have one in your package, and again, it's a one-time use, so you want to use a new naloxone every single time. So with that, I turn it over back to you.
Other than to thank the CEO of Kimmy's Recovery Zone, I really have nothing other to add. Just thank you very much for your help and support. We know this is a vital tool, and to our board, when we talk about school safety, we're into issues that I don't think any of us could have possibly imagined as we were children going through school. So appreciate our team's forward thinking and trying to create the safest environment possible for our children, and ensuring that the tools are present in our school by working with amazing partners so that we can be first responders in case this is ever necessary. Mr. Chair, for you and your board to discuss.
Thank you. Any discussion? Ms. Patrica?
I have some questions, if I may. Have we had incidents of overdose in our schools? Is anyone aware?
This time I've had none reported directly to me since my superintendency, but I have only been here a short year, so I would defer to the team if there's been any other additional information that's been provided.
No, we do not have any additional information about overdoses.
All right, and now I have two really stupid questions. If somebody is not breathing, how does it help to put this up their nose when they can't breathe it in? Sorry, I know that sounds stupid.
So it's it's going to be absorbed through their mucus lining, and that's how it's going to be able to get into their system.
All right, and then I think I mentioned to you and the superintendent before this meeting started, everywhere I read, everywhere I go, I'm told I should carry Narcan with me everywhere I go all the time. Like I could be out in an ice cream place and a kid's passed out, I administer Narcan, saves their life. What is the best way to carry it in the Florida heat? Where do I put it on me so that it's available to me all the time? I know it sounds stupid, but what do you recommend? Maybe anyone.
So again, you could carry it in your purse, in a bag that you have. Some of our SROs or emergency responders, they have a little pocket, so to say, or a little pouch that they carry that in. And I don't know if Heidi would recommend anything else, but again, that's how usually it's just carried. Some people even just keep it in their car, you know, and it's having it available when you need it.
All right, and does putting it in your car ruin it because it's too hot?
It says 104.
So there is recommendation that it should be kept within certain temperatures. But so again, keeping it on your person would be the best course of action.
Those are my, thank you very much for the presentation. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to thank our team for bringing this forward. It's obviously, it's a very scary subject. I mean, I know as a parent, it's something that, you know, it's something constantly, you know, on your mind, you know, especially with what fentanyl can do these days. So I really appreciate it and really appreciate the district stepping up for this. Thank you to Kimmy's Recovery Zone as well for stepping up. I know you guys do a lot in the community and I appreciate it. I'm on the drug-free coalition here, and we hear a lot from, as Ms. Jordan knows, from Kimmy's and others. This is a constant topic that comes up. So I just want to say I'm very thankful that, you know, we're dealing with in district and really stepping up for that. So thank you.
Yes, Mr. Vanelli.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to see that we have this. I know that we may not have had needed it in the past or today, but who knows what tomorrow is going to bring, and I think it's better being safe than sorry. I have read many articles about this where someone's had it on their neck at a concert and they've had to use it. My mom had to use it, and their daughter recognized the what was going on, and that the person was, you know, it was drug related or whatever. So I think it's a scary topic, but it's something that it's a conversation that we have to have, and I think, like I said, it's better being safe than sorry. And at this point, I'm excited to see that we are going to have this in the schools. So, you know, I'll be curious to see how the training goes and that kind of thing, and how that kind of unrolls and unravels in schools, because I'm sure you know, it's a little touchy subject for people, but it's reality. Thank you.
Ms. Jordan?
I'd just like to say thank you as well, and I'm very familiar with Heidi and Al and the people at Kidney Zones, and they're always out in the community. As we know, in today's world, there's just so much going on, and so they're always out there trying to educate because it's very personal to them. So I just really appreciate you being here and making this happen. Everybody, thank you.
Any other discussion? Nope. I just want to say that this is a problem that has not been constant. It's growing every year. So, I mean, that's what we have to look forward to, you know, and that's it's an unfortunate fact, but opioid, whatever, thank you, deaths are rising every year. I was just looking at some stats the other day. So thank you so much for making this available and the training. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, next we will welcome Dr. Savage. We all know him and love him. And our legislative consultant, Kim McDougall. Is she on the line or is she here?
Yep, she's a Zoom.
Good afternoon.
Howdy. And we're going to discuss on legislative priorities.
So before Dr. Savage and Attorney McDougall get started, I wanted to just take the opportunity to remind you of how we got here. With the legislative calendar being produced and Kim providing us some Ms. McDougall providing us some very specific information as to how quickly the legislature will be coming back because of the election year. At the previous workshop and board meeting, we had some discussions about bringing the platform process to this board sooner so that we could be better prepared in order to submit to various organizations, organize, get some ideas down on paper, and to begin to organize what the platform could look like in preparation for not only our Tallahassee visits, but like I said, the other organizations that ask school boards to submit their platforms prior to the legislative session beginning. This will be an initial board discussion. In some of our one-on-ones, you talked to me about several different ideas that you had as individuals. This is an opportunity to interact both with Dr. Savage and Ms. McDougall so that they can capture those ideas, bring them back in some type of format for us to look at again, and then get us to the finish line of a final and approved board platform moving forward in terms of legislative priorities. We look forward to Dr. Savage and Ms. McDougall's, and not really a presentation, but to their leadership today to help us get to some of the subject matters and other initiatives that you'd like to see become part of your platform.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier, and good afternoon, Chairman, Vice Chairman, board members, Dr. Bernier and Attorney Dupuy-Bruno. Today, we are here for your initial board discussion as it pertains to legislative priorities for this year. I also want to introduce our esteemed lobbyist, Dr. Kim McDougall from the firm Gray Robinson, who is joining us remotely today as well. So I just want to acknowledge to make sure Dr. McDougall is available.
Yes, hi. Hi again.
As a side note, this isn't really an informative deck today. It's more just to keep the conversation moving because this really is the board's discussion. The content that we'll go over is actually already on our public facing website. So I'll just orient us to that when that time period comes. Just to go briefly, agenda is what we'll be discussing today for leading up to your discussion. We're going to review our existing legislative priorities, many of which did achieve some type of result. So we will briefly orient to those results as well. Then we'll review our presently suggested course of action based on what Dr. Bernier had laid out, based on the board's most recent conversation on this topic, which of course we can revise as the board deems appropriate. But this is our present suggested thinking on the process. Then the board will have their initial discussion to help the superintendent, staff, as well as our lobbyist so that on our side we can course correct the work that has already begun to support you, as well as guide the work yet to come. Lastly, we will attempt to finalize any next steps so there's clarity for everyone involved in terms of what comes next and when. So first, I just wanted to orient you with our current priorities, and so the public can follow along, or even the board or anyone here. This is available and has been on our district website. There's a direct link here, so if anyone doesn't want to go to, but just for the sake of showing how simple it is to get to it, it shows up here in our website. You simply go under School Board. The drop down is Legislative Priorities, and that shows us what our current legislative priorities are. I've already pulled it up, but this is directly where it takes you. Once it's there, at the very first link at the top here, this New State Budget Funds School District Hurricane Ian Recovery, this summarizes, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like very quickly. This summarizes the significant hurricane recovery funding that was appropriated, over $17.5 million. That appropriation request was sponsored by Representative Persons Malika and Senator Martin, and eventually it was formalized as part of Governor DeSantis's budget. And so with a total direct appropriations amount of more than $21.5 million, this was a very impactful legislative session for us in the school district of Lee County and for our county altogether. Backing up, let me orient you back to the rest of what we have here on this website. So you'll see it's legislative priorities. It has that particular piece. This link right here actually takes us to all of our one-pagers, which you as board members know very well. These are the one-pagers that really help you understand each of the various proposals and the rationale and so forth. And so those are all available to the public as well, not just to board members, to help kind of show what is the issue, why is it important to us, and such things such as a fiscal impact. Below, though, if you don't want to look at all those specific one-pagers, we have a summary listing of each priority as well as the outcome of this most recent advocacy. Now, in some cases, this was a fully funded outcome. In others, it summarizes changes to the laws, and in some cases, there may not have been any documented outcome at this time. Now, moving down this list, I'm not going to read every single one of these, but just a few highlights. One of the largest funded outcomes that we had was the $1.244 million expansion over at the Cape Coral Technical College. And this money is intended to fund the Master Campus Architectural Design and Engineering work. That is for the pre-construction of adding the 2 buildings to the campus property. And so that's a pretty significant funding allocation that was made. Appropriation. While the second particular one that's listed right below this, the Workforce Development Capitalization Incentive Grant, this is also known as the CAP grant. While this didn't carry any direct funding at this time specifically to us, it did shift the grant over to Florida Department of Education to administer it. And that process is actually underway as we speak, where they are taking applications for this grant. And it's a significant amount of money that's available. And I highlight this because this is a real opportunity as one of the districts that is growing our program. This helps with that startup funding for new workforce development programs in the form of equipment, supplies, furniture, equipment related expenses. And considering how expensive some of these programs can be to get up off the ground, it's a wonderful opportunity for us to apply to those funds that is now issued through the Department of Ed. You'll also see in the description some tangentially related legislation that summarized the outcome section here and just related to things such as workforce development. Moving down the list to the safety and security technology, this was a significant area that was funded of $2.5 million for safety and security technology in our schools. So again, a significant investment in our community and our school district. And just to plant a seed, while you as a board are having your initial conversation today, there is parallel work that's happening at the staff level where our leaders are making recommendations internally of amending prior legislation or adding new legislative opportunities, but we don't want to get the wagon with the horses. I always get this backwards. We don't want to get the cart in front of the horses. And so that's why it's so important we have this conversation with the the board today to make sure that we're really on the same track. But just so you know, this is one particular area that's already been identified internally as an opportunity since we were so successful in this most recent year. Again, briefly, not to go over all of them, but we did get $250,000 allocated for the expansion of the after-school activities as well, and that's very significant as well. Well, also, just to draw attention to one of our long-standing requests that we had was an increased cost per student station. While it didn't come in the exact form that was requested, one of the elements that snuck into House Bill 1 that was very unique is this flexibility for new construction that adds student stations, and as long as it's commenced prior to July 1st, 2026, that within this 3-year window, that requirement is waived. And so even when we didn't necessarily get exactly what we asked for, and this was a very long-standing request that we had due to the inflated costs of construction that we were seeing in our area, that clearly there was some support there as well. Lastly, at the bottom, when we pass, you'll see a lot of these post-Hurricane Ian recovery requests that are separated out. And I already mentioned that at the very beginning because there's a detailed sheet that summarizes that. But this was a very significant amount of resource for our community that was honored. Now, because certainly I am not the expert, I'm really just here to occupy the space of a staff member to help in this endeavor. The real expert on the end that we're very fortunate to have with us on the phone, Dr. Kim McDougall, if you had anything else that you wanted to highlight based on this most recent session and the results and the advocacy that you would like to highlight, please do so at this time.
Well, thank you. That was a great overview. It was a great, successful year for your school district, thanks to the hard work of not only your wonderful chair, Mr. Chairpersons, your vice chair. Everyone came up to Tallahassee. Some came up several times. It was a big lift, but thankfully you had President Pasadomo, Senate President. You had Senator Martin that carried all your lifts over in the Senate. And then you had great House members like Representative Persons, you had Representative Esposito, you had Representative Botano, you had great friends in the legislature, and because you had Representative Roach as well, they carried the water for you because your asks were, number one, reasonable, number two, realistic, and they were relevant. So they fit within the bandwidth of the legislature. Governor DeSantis was very gracious in approving all of the items, so we thank him for that. So it's really a whole process. A lot of people did the work, and Dr. Bernier and his team, and obviously Denise Carlin did the yeoman's lift of work, doing all the one-pagers, getting information. This is a 24/7 job, and Denise, and I have to compliment your district staff. Not all clients are created equal, but let me tell you, your staff worked really hard to get the information. It was challenging. You know, we didn't know the numbers. It was kind of, what number's right? What did we ask for? Because it was rolling. You kept getting information from the property tax appraisers, putting your own assessments, but the legislature was gracious. They understood it. I think at the end of the day, it was a huge win, in part to everyone's effort. And having said that, the good news is if you look at the revenue estimating conference and what they're forecasting for next year, if things stay on the trajectory that they are, as we hope that they do, number one, they downgraded the risk of a recession. Number two, they're thinking we're going to have about the same amount of increase that we had last year. So things are going well. So I know, Ken, when you're talking to the board, think about things. Obviously, last year was a big financial win. And again, you have President Pasadomo there, and you have a great delegation. Think about, do you want to do safety and security funds next year? Is there any unanticipated hurricane expenses that either increase just because the cost of price is increasing? You know, what are the asks that help your students the most? And is there anything lingering from the hurricane?
Thank you, Dr. McDougall. And we're very close to the board discussion segment. We just want to quickly review our suggested course of action. Again, this is very much can be revised, but staff is already underway. For example, as you see in the second bullet here, staff is already underway to develop revised internal recommendations, but we really wanted to begin with this initial board member conversation based on the timeline to try to maximize our advocacy. The third bullet is really another opportunity to help us ground the timing that we have for the work ahead, which is scheduling any formalized advocacy visits. And so that is one aspect that immediately upon receiving this ability to assist, I talked to Dr. McDougall and asked her specifically, what is your best recommendation so that at this first board conversation, we can at least mention an ideal time frame. And for Dr. McDougall, it was very clear. There was a very specific, not only was there a specific window, but even a specific date that if we could find a way to make that work, it would be ideal based on her strategic understanding of the current committee work that is scheduled, when legislators would be most optimal to receive any type of piece. And the date that was provided was October 11th. That's a little bit of a challenge for us because we already have a board workshop scheduled for that date. But that's just something to place in the board's radar, that if we could make that October 11th date work, because we have a day scheduled for a workshop, if that were to be a substitution, that would give us a great way to reverse engineer where we are today to that date, so that by the time you were there in October, you would be fully prepared and ready to go. And so with that in mind as a potential, I'm just going to kind of apply that to what you have in front of you, which is essentially we would then want to formalize and finalize our legislative platform, our priorities on October the 3rd. That's a board action meeting. That would give us time between now and then to get all the details, get the one sheets prepared, so that you would be able to go on the 11th be there on the 11th if that were something that the board agreed to do based on Dr. McDougall's recommendation. Not to box you in, but that was specifically her recommendation that I wanted to make sure I gave rise to, so you could have that as part of your discussion today. If that can't work, if that isn't based on the scheduling and isn't able to work, she was able to think of potential other windows such as November. There potentially a window there, but definitely she wanted me to reiterate that if you could make the 11th work, it would be the optimal time based on the current legislative schedule is what they have at the present piece. And I'll give her another opportunity to give any additional information I may have omitted on that. But this would allow us to complete all the other activities prior to that and continue to bring information back and forth to the board in terms of those one sheets, so that by the time you feel very confident that you could finalize by that date in October, which would be October 3rd. That would be our tentative idea. That said, before I turn things over back to the board conversation, as we typically do customarily, Dr. Bernier, did you have any comments you wish to make at this time, sir?
Just want to echo the sentiments of Dr. McDougall, and I think Dr. McDougall is a great example of a great leader, right? When things go really well, it's all about everybody else, but I think she deserves accolades and credit for the amount of work that she did to get us in front of the right people at the right time. So to what Dr. Savage is speaking about, I think it's incredibly important that we think about that October 3rd deadline as a begin with the end in mind point. If we could establish that during the discussion today, that'll allow Dr. Savage, myself, and eventually with your approval this evening, potentially Angel Gomez, that'll help our new Communications and Government Relations Director, or Chief of Government Relations and Communications, give him an opportunity to get involved and begin the process of getting us to the finish line on the 3rd. That'll mean in the work sessions that are coming and briefings coming, we will continue to bring this forward to all of you to have those discussions. But before I get into the discussion, I just have to take 1 second again to thank the Southwest Florida delegation. We did great work. We got in front of them. We gave them great reasons to be and to be a part of the solutions here in Lee County Post-Ian, and they did not back down. They stood up for us. They brought dollars not only to the entire state of Florida, but they carved out certain sections specifically for the school district of Lee County, and we're thankful for that support. And I do think one of the things we do have to consider are some lingering issues from Ian. I know we're still planning an October update for all of you regarding where we are in the FEMA process, but I do think we are going to have some leftover expenses that potentially, if Dr. McDougall's analysis is correct and those dollars are going to be there, I think we want to continue to be at the forefront of saying, while our counties to the north of us have experienced a terrible storm in Idalia, we still have some lingering issues and could use some additional attention as we move forward in this particular legislative process. So I just would like to have you consider that as part of the platform, and then I can work with staff to get that data behind it so that we'll know more about what our potential ask would be. I'll turn it back to the chairman at this time for board discussions about where you'd like to see policy platforms, ideas, and concepts, and then that'll give myself, Dr. Savage, Dr. McDougall, and Mr. Gomez the opportunity to begin the process of getting more discussions scheduled and get a finalized platform done. And I don't think it's a superintendent recommendation. I think it's a superintendent bringing forth your work for approval.
Thank you. I just want to, before we get started, I just want to say not only thank you to our delegation, but both parties, all the delegations from all over the state, because they all understand what happened to us could happen to them tomorrow or whatever. So they were very receptive too, and that was very important, because just one delegation doesn't get you very far. All right, discussion, Ms. Giovanelli, start down there.
I'll be real quick. Echoing in my head, and I keep remembering, Ms. Patrica would always say we need to get on our priorities sooner than later, and somehow sooner didn't happen. This might actually happen. So I have to thank everybody for that, because I mean, I remember every year, probably about this time, and maybe a little bit even sooner, she would be saying something, but it would just never really happen. So that's what pops in my head. I'm open to the let's go there October 11th. I believe in the recommendation from Dr. McDougall, and I think we need to, jump on it. That's what I'm going to say. Thank you.
Ms. Patrica.
October 11th is fine. And while I do believe that Dr. McDougall and our delegation, along with the representatives and senators across the state, deserve credit, I know the superintendent can't call out 3 board members, but I think the relationship that our 3 newest board members have with our delegation was absolutely instrumental in our success last year as well. So I want to thank the 3 of you for that, and for continuing those relationships. You deserve a lot of credit. I was along for the ride, and I'm very grateful you were driving. I appreciate that. And I know that this is not going to be part of our legislative platform, because Dr. McDougall will tell us it's a non-starter and you can't walk in and ask for that $1.5 million back. But we have got to do something to increase revenue so that we can pay our teachers and our staff. And while it might not be part of this discussion, this board needs to have that discussion. I was at a meeting this morning where just every time a teacher goes to that podium and they say to us, do something more, give us more, we need more, we can't afford to live here anymore. That's an evolution that has taken place over 7 years on this board. Teachers didn't come here 7 years ago and say that. Why? Because it wasn't that expensive to live here 7 years ago. And they could live on what we could pay them 7 years ago. We are sandwiched in between 2 counties that have additional operational revenue. And if we don't do something, we are going to continue to be turning to inexperienced, degreed people who have no educational experience or education at all. I mean, that's what we're doing. We're losing highly effective 15, 20-year teachers, and instead we're hiring people with engineering degrees or law degrees or whatever degrees they have, and trying to fit them into the box of being a teacher, and we're losing excellence in our classrooms, and we've got to find a solution to that. That, to me, is our #1 priority, or my #1 priority. And again, I know Dr. McDougall will say, Chris, we can't do that in our legislative platform because you walk in the room and you ask for that, and they're going to say no, and they're probably going to shut down to anything else we ask for. But I would like a commitment to discuss as a board how we're going to fix that problem. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Comments? Ms. Morgan.
So, let's see, I have a question. The expansion of the after-school activities, $250,000, that was a one-time distribution. Is that something we go back for? Is that, I assume that had to do with Ian, getting kids ready for, or getting kids caught up? But is that something we go back to the well for again? I think that's really more a state issue. I think unless we have data from spending the $250,000, what did we do with it? What were the outcomes? I think it would be a difficult ask, but I also recognize that we use the money, and if it was that productive, maybe we use data to go back to the well. That's one question. But my comment, or something I would like to see included, and I think this is also a state-wide thing, but we've got to do something about early childhood. And I know that the federal government, through their Economic Development Authority, has provided grants, one of which is being used by the Collaboratory and FGCU. It's a Good Jobs Grant 22 through 25. It's providing funding for paras to go into teaching roles, and it's actually K-12. But I would like to see something about pre-K. We've got a couple of problems with pre-K. Pre-K or VPK, let's start with VPK. VPK is 9 to 12. Let me be very candid. Who is using 9 to 12 childcare? People who are not working. We have got to start making a plea to get that to be at least 9 to 5. Who else can't use childcare? People who work at night or people who work a different schedule. It should be full-time, and it should be infant or, well, I'm conflating two things. Pre-K, let me just stick with pre-K. We need to get pre-K to a full-time. I would love to see, and what this federal grant does is provide the funding for the paras to get the certifications they need to move up that career ladder. We need funding for the para certification itself in pre-K. I'm throwing this out because I absolutely believe that the fact that we have kids coming to school not ready for school is hurting us. And if we don't start talking about it, you know, there's only so much we can do. Now, whether we take this on as a local initiative or as a state initiative, I don't know. I just thought that given that this grant expires in 2025, it would be nice to be out there now talking about pre-K, so that when those grants expire, assuming that we are using or accessing them in the school district, that we have built some support in the legislature for taking that on at the state level as opposed to relying on the feds. So that's a long-winded thing, but comment, but that's a passion of mine. And the other passion is getting a technical college out in Lehigh. I know that we're not ready to do that, but there may be a way we can put that on the radar now that they've done what they've done with the Cape. I think there are some innovative strategies we need to explore that might be of interest to the delegation. But anyway, those are my personal passions for my last legislative session on this board. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you. First off, again, thank you to our legislative delegation, as well as the rest of the legislature throughout the state. Thank you to Dr. McDougall. She did a great job, as well as the now retired Dr. Carlin. I really appreciate everything with that and what we're able to get back to the school district, Lee County. A couple things regarding what Ms. Patrica said. Yeah, I mean, obviously teachers, I mean, that is a significant issue right now. One of the things I was kind of contemplating, and there's in regards to teachers, and again, this is more than just Lee County, and this is kind of a long game. I would not expect that for this session, but maybe to see if, which I know there may be some noise to this, being able to walk back or relax some of the statutes in how we are able to pay the teachers, the difference between what we could do with veterans and stuff like that, seeing if there's any flexibility. Again, that would be more of a long game one, but if we could get to that to maybe make it a little easier so we can differentiate that a little bit better, you know, like how they used to with that. I know that was one thing that was a possibility. It's a question I get asked by a lot of other elected officials. the differences between the pay of the, our new teachers versus our veteran teachers. The second thing is, I agree, Ms. Morgan, in regards to tech. I think that is another one we should probably try to approach with the delegation in regards to anything with our tech schooling or trade. I know obviously our governor is very open to that as well, so I think that would be a hit with that. Another one I'm just throwing out there is I'm wondering if with safety and security, I don't even know the scope of this, so I don't want to go too out of line in this, but I know that it was allowed that we can now have cameras on school buses on the in regard for legal passing. I don't know maybe what that scope is, if we could maybe see if we get an allocation for that, if that's something that's possible, and if something the board is even interested in. So those are my thoughts for the moment. Thank you.
Mr. Jordan?
So if I can we ask Dr. McDougall, as far as what we already have for our legislative platform, what she believes that and thank you very much for making all those meetings and everything happen for us. It was good that we were able to get in there and speak to all the people that we really needed to speak to, so thank you for that. And I do believe it was everybody being up there and speaking. It wasn't just 3 board members. No, I'm not taking nothing away from you, but I want to say it was all of us together collectively working hard. But if we, could you tell us, when you look at this list, is there things on here, as Ms. Morgan had also mentioned, that we should go ahead and go back for, like safety and security, technology? Is there more funds that we should keep? Should we keep some of these things on here, or look at replacing all of them?
I would think about a couple of things. Definitely what Dr. Benier said, Superintendent Benier said about your additional hurricane expenses. I would also think your safety and security money, that was used for a new setup where you get lots of students in and out in a much more safe and secure way. Did that solve your problem for the $2.5 million, or do you need another one of those? So you think about that with all of your asks. The after school activities, it was my understanding that it wasn't related to the hurricane. It was more, you have some students that maybe can't afford after school activities to do the mentoring, to do the mentoring, the advising, the extra homework, the clubs. So it was like a way to make sure that all the kids had just gone through a really tough time after the hurricane. So it was making sure that any kids that wanted to participate in after school in your elementary schools had an opportunity to do that, to kind of level the playing field with all the students. So that was a great thing. And so unfortunately, because you just got the money in July and your school year is just starting, you had great questions, but you're not going to have to answer the questions of how the money was spent until the end of the school year. I don't think that precludes you from asking for it again, because I think you're strictly focused on what's best for the kids. And obviously that appropriation request was really what was needed for those kids. And then the Cape Coral, that was great. We got that done. So yes, tech is a big issue, but if you're not ready for it, to do another tech request, you're not ready for it, and that's okay. And then back to your, Mr. Fisher, back to your comment about maybe some less regulation about how to, you could pay teachers, have more flexibility in your whole pay schedule. Remembering when the legislature passed HB1 and Governor DeSantis signed it, that was a universal voucher bill, scholarship bill, whatever you want to call it. They also had a provision in there about deregulation. So the legislature and the governor's office, they want to level the playing field between traditional, private, charter. What regulations can we get rid of so you guys can be more innovative and more responsive? Because now you're competing with everyone, as you have been for years. It's just now way more competitive. So I would be thinking, as part of your legislative platform, if you need more flexibility in pay, the superintendent needs more flexibility, whatever, get rid of the cost per student station. What are some key laws that are a hindrance to you being the best you can be as a school district? And I think that's going to be a big lift of what you're going to see the legislature do this. November 14th, the Department of Education is going to release its recommendations. It's had a portal open up for weeks where people across the state submitted ideas. And they're going to review those recommendations, as well as all DOE staff. Every division is going through, looking at laws which they recommend. So we'll know what they recommend November 14th. The House and the Senate have both said, and bring us any additional recommendations that's not covered in the DOE recommendation. So I think it's a huge opportunity to have less regulation for the public schools, so you can be more innovative. The list, I can't see. I'm trying to pull the list up, and I can't see it, so I don't know if you can help me, Ken, and I can rocket docket that real quick. Go back. Okay, so workforce. So that was actually the Workforce Development Capitalization Incentive Grant Fund. That was actually in, I think, Senate Bill 240, 100 million. So remember, the year before, the legislature didn't fund it, but Governor DeSantis, that has been a priority of his for a couple of years, and he got it last year. So as you're adding your new campus property at Cape Coral, please make sure you use the capitalization incentive grant and apply, as I'm sure Dr. Benier and your team are doing. The next one, the per pupil funding. I think, as everyone knows, if you go to the grocery store, go anywhere, costs are going up without doing anything different. So I think per pupil funding, I think especially this year, we know the state's going to have a good years. I would recommend, you want to keep increasing it by at least 5% just to pay for what it's going to cost next year. I think that's a good one. I think you need to do that on behalf of your students, but ultimately this is your agenda. The Safe Schools allocation, I think you need to look at. Remember, they did the modernization of the FEFP. They made a ton of changes, but they did keep some categoricals, which this one is. Safe schools allocation. Can you ever have your school safe enough? Probably not, but you do the best you can. You guys are doing a great job. So you have to look at the safe schools allocation and the mental health allocation. Do you want to switch to the mental health allocation based on your students after Hurricane Ian? Is there enough mental health, or do you want to stick with safe schools? Both of those are great platform issues. And again, I talked about the safety and security technology. You may want to expand that to another location in your district, or if that was enough, that's enough, and we can move on to something else. Expansion of after-school activities. If your students need it, they need it. So I would look at how you're using it this year. Did the students enroll, or students for the first time ever doing after-school activities they didn't get to do before? If that's the case, we should keep it. Superintendent flexibility and teacher retention. So I think this is a good one to keep, but you might want to consider putting this as a bullet under dereg because you're going to need some examples, in my opinion, on ideas for deregulation. This one might be a deregulation. And also the social work, that makes no sense to me. It's just there were so many big education bills. The social workers and the Florida teacher certification exam, I would 100% keep that on. The retired teachers return to classroom. This is, we should try to make it a run for that again. There's been all sorts of conversations when I talked to the House and I talked about the Senate a lot last year. And part of it is the FRS is a retirement system. And they said certain classes of employees can't come back, or it affects the entire retirement system. And if it's too fluid, then the FRS is no longer a retirement system, but yet some other classes have been able to do it. I think that's the right policy. And as you've spoken about the dais today, you want to do everything you can. Here you are, your teachers want to come back. Let them come back. They nibbled around the edges last year. Like if you're a school board member and you leave, you can actually now go volunteer in one of your grandchildren's or grandchild's classroom, which before you couldn't, just based on the way the IRS and the FRS defined you, which that was crazy. So at least some of the things are getting fixed there. Increased cost per student station. I think for the dereg, just get rid of it. The state should not be setting a cost per student station for school districts, period. Pre-kindergarten classrooms and fish calculation, 100%. They should be doing that. You should get the credit for the kids that you're serving. I would leave that on there. And then the post-Hurricane Ian recovery, I would go back to Dr. Benier and kind of find out what are these issues that weren't resolved through FEMA, or just because of the cost of things, or something came up that you didn't anticipate. And I think that's a pretty robust agenda. But I had a meeting with someone in the Senate President's office today, and I can't tell you how important, and they want to hear from school districts, what are some deregulation ideas.
So
that's my 2 cents.
No, I really appreciate it, because I think it's really important. You are in the trenches all the time, so you see what has taken place. So I really appreciate it, and that gives us at least a start where we were at last year and how we can maybe possibly continue. But I do also agree with Ms. Morgan regarding the VPK, the 9 through 12, because I believe, and my grandchild is one of them, so she's fortunate enough to be able to go there and be picked up. But there are so many kids that would be able to participate if they were able to stay longer. So this does present a hindrance on a lot of families that are not able to get the kids there by 9 and then pick them up at noon. So I think that's something we really need to look at. And as well as of course, trying to find the funds and the means to pay our teachers, to keep them teaching. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Ms. Jordan just said. The federal government is actually treating pre-K as an employment issue, and so workforce development issue. And so, maybe there's a way to tackle it through workforce development as well as, education.
Any other questions or comments? I know Mr. Fisher brought this up on the buses. I would love to see that put in there. That is a priority. I know we have to work out an agreement with the sheriff and everything else because, well, they do tickets and things like that in the different police departments. But I think we all saw the one picture of the truck almost running over a kid first few days of school. Yeah. Might have even been the first day, I don't know, but real early. And I've seen one since then myself. Go past one. I was stopped behind them, but they just came right on the other way. So I think it's needed as much as any of our other programs. I know we also, I've talked to the superintendent about some other ways to strengthen the schools, but I don't want to mention those right now in an open session. So I think we definitely should go back to safety and security and ask. I know the one grant paid for most of the open gate that we have, but not all of it. So maybe we can piggyback that, but sort of put all those maybe together and go from there. I know in the pre-K we're building a new school out in Lehigh, and that's going well, but I would love to see one at every school. Yeah, I mean, it's a center versus a pre-K out of school, but I think is definitely something we should all shoot for. And the after-school program, that was sort of working with Big Brothers and things like that to offset the expenses. But you're right, after a year, it's gone. Then you're going to tell these kids that can't afford it, you can't do it anymore. So that might be something we have to either fund ourselves every year or do that because it's needed. Because kids get into trouble when they have nothing to do after school. Simple as that. So I think all the other priorities I think look really good. So I think the superintendent definitely will be the one to go with all the E&S. He's the most up to date on that. And the only other thing I'm worried about is I'm not sure when legislative day is, because they start back in September. It might be the end of September, 1st of October. So we might, if we have to go do an ask or whatever, we may need this a little bit sooner. But I think we'll be working on it, updated on it. We may have to just, if it's okay with the board, just go with the preliminary ask before we officially pass it, maybe on October 3rd. If it's before then, it might be after then. But I don't know. I just know they start so early this year. Kim, have you gotten any information? I haven't even, from my sources.
No, that's a good point. I'm looking right now. I know a lot of delegations are starting to meet. You know, the House is just meeting in September. Then October is a big ticket month. I'm looking on delegations. Let me check real quick. I don't see a meeting right now, but I can check and find out.
And I'll ask too. I should have probably maybe done that earlier. I mean, we're discussing that if they've set a date. Okay, Ms. Jordan?
It looks like they're running, and this may, Dr. McDougall, you may be, I have something that says January 9th through March 8th. For the
That session. That's session. Yes, it's here already.
The first meeting,
yeah.
The first meeting is Friday. It's in September, right?
Correct.
Yeah, it's a house, only the House is meeting in September.
Okay.
So not only, the House is very important as well, but really things are cranking up around here. October, November, and December are just packed. Session starts, I believe, on January 9th and ends March 8th.
Thank you.
But I think your chairperson is talking about the local delegation meeting. But I think just because session was so huge last year, with the summer, everything happening, a lot of delegations are meeting later this year than normal. And remembering last year was President Pasadomo's first year as president and Speaker Brenner's first year as speaker. So last year was a big policy lift. Not that history can tell you a whole lot in this situation, but normally the big policy lifts are the first year and a lot more budget focused the second year of their leadership tenure. But who knows what will happen this year. But I will find out the delegation meeting.
I think the October 11th date is excellent. You know, if we can make it, that would be
They need to
good.
get up there early and get what you guys vote on, what you decide, get in front of your delegation. They were gracious last year because of what that means. And then the House appropriation forms are due November 14th. So while the platform is great, your staff has a lot of work to do to get the actual behind the scenes paperwork done. It's not easy. It has to be detailed and it cannot be wrong. So October 3rd will help Ken and hopefully your new Chief Communication Government Relations Director solidify the paperwork that has to be done behind the scenes.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Ms. Patrica.
I just wanted to, if I could through the chair, ask Dr. Bernier, beyond the hurricane, potential, unresolved needs, is there anything that you can think of, either from your perspective or from the perspective of staff, that should be either added to the legislative platform or added to the dereg requests? Because the dereg requests, I would think that would be a very long list of things needed in order to create an even playing field with charter schools.
So we are already underway, as Dr. Savage said, we're already underway talking with staff about deregulation requests and what else we could bring to the session. I do believe that the next most important thing after things like school safety, or maybe even above school safety, I hate to put things, curriculum, school safety, teacher and employee pay. They all hover at 1A, 1B, and 1C. And depending on who you are, you rank them into the A, B, or C category. Those are our critical components moving up. I do believe based upon surrounding counties, we are struggling to meet what other counties are able to pay their educators. And if that doesn't come in the form of some of the suggestions I heard today, then we have to look at FEFP and to Mr. Fisher and some private conversations with others. Then it has to come in looking at regulations that prevent us from providing additional dollars to experienced teachers. Experience came out under previous administrations, and the legislatures held on to it. I think for legitimate reasons, that they wanted not just experience to be the only form of pay, but is there another way we can look at how we can support our educators, our paraprofessionals, and our administrators to ensure we have the operational dollars necessary to provide them the additional money. We could also, in the course of a conversation, demonstrate how we've done some work to become more operationally efficient. By the time we get up there, we'll have some early numbers regarding what we've done and what potentially the transportation system, while still, as I promised, would not be the perfect panacea to fix all our problems. Eliminating 15,000 miles from that particular set of runs has monetary savings attached to it. And we can certainly put that money anywhere this board would like to put it. But I think it also gives us some leverage in Tallahassee to say we're doing what we can to become a more efficient, leaner organization, and yet still we can't necessarily compete with others. So I think the safety issue, I think the post-hurricane issues, I think the payment of our teachers are the big ones, but I do think Dr. Savage and I have some work to do moving forward to really dig into regulations and what can we ask for. And it sounds like under Dr. McDougall's direction, we should be casting a wider net and not really worrying about what we can't do, but let's ask for what we would like to do and see how the legislature settles out that particular issue on our behalf. There will be things that they will say no to, but it doesn't prevent us from asking for it. So I've heard that recommendation loud and clear.
Right. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. Dr. Savage? And Dr. McDougall. Sorry, you're still there. All right. Moving on to the agenda review for September 6th, the regular agenda. Dr. Bernier?
This time I've not received any official questions from the board, but would stand ready for any questions regarding the agenda. I will offer one thing to the community in case people are listening, and I had our Director of Planning reach out to members of the Alva community. We did pull, at my suggestion, I did pull the NNN decision for Phase 1. I wrote it in an email to all of you separately, that I just find it disingenuous for us to be voting on that issue with the community meeting hovering for the 12th. So let's have the meeting on the 12th. I will bring it back date certain for September 19th and know that we'll have to render some form of decision at that point. In the meantime, beginning and finishing, either beginning or finishing the exhaustive questions some of you've had as to what the property costs, what it potentially could be in a sale, where else we could locate. And I'm not finding, I'll just be candid, I'm not finding the answers that I think you would want me to find, where I have found the perfect place to build the school building and still impact the school buildings we would like to impact that are overcrowded. So I'm interested in going out with Dr. Malloy on the 12th. I believe our Chief of Staff will be joining me as well. And we will listen to the community, but we're also going to listen to what they want, but we're going to ask them to engage in a process of, if this school went forward, what would you like to see the educational programming look like? And we'll see how willing this particular group is. And I have great assumption that they will be willing to engage in that part of the process as well. But our first step will be to listen to them as to the whys and the whys nots. But if this did move forward with Phase 1, what would they like to see in the final phases for the programmatic offerings to be in that high school that would support their community, their students, and their lifestyle and expectations for a rural community. So I just wanted to make sure the board knew that I had pulled that item.
Thank you. All right. Last is the good of the order. Board members, Mr. Fisher, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I have three things. I'll do it now instead of probably later on. First thing is kind of piggybacking off the Narcan conversation. As I mentioned, I'm on the Drug-Free Coalition of Southwest Florida, and the chair of the vice chair of that have indicated they'd like to come by and set meetings just to kind of discuss with each board member kind of what their mission is and the impacts they have. So if you guys are interested in taking those meetings, I will pass on our assistance information to them if you guys are open to that. So I think it's very interesting. They do some great work. So next up, just had a question kind of where we are procedurally. We're looking at a board auditor, kind of where that process is and where we're kind of looking at to move forward timeline wise. I can pause on that one.
Members of the board, and directly to Mr. Fisher, at your direction, we have been working not only with internal auditing, but HR, as well as Dr. Savage, to look at what an internal auditing job description would look like. We are in the process of that being developed. We expect to bring that to you before the end of the month or in early October. There have been competing priorities with the CHRO, but now that seems to be moved forward and we can now begin our focus in other places, we can begin the process of helping to develop and then utilizing our compensation team, give you an idea of where a position like that would land in the compensation structure for the school district.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Also going off that conversation, Ms. Patrica had mentioned it's been a month or 2 months, it's blending together in regards when we were talking about the auditor, and you talked about the clerk of courts. I know Clerk Carnes would be interested in talking with us further. I don't know if in a meeting to see what other opportunities are and what they could do. I don't know if the board is interested in that or the superintendent. I wanted to relay that part of it as well. Last thing I have, I was approached by the Chamber of Commerce of Cape Coral, and with I think it's a very fantastic idea. I've discussed this with the superintendent and what they're looking to, and it's kind of one of my passions. I know many others on the board is how we can get our, trades, tech colleges, businesses more, integrated and work as one and provide additional opportunities. And one of the things they talked about was over in Cape Coral having a small kind of initial meeting, and what they would do is, we'd have, somebody from the school district and, some other community members, but bring in, for example, a couple people from industries, marine, electrical, HVAC, some of those things that we offer. And what they would do is basically listen to them, see what those people in the business community, what they're missing, what they're looking for, what we could do then, and kind of then proceed from that way. Just getting a better relationship, seeing what the actual specific needs are in that community. So just wanted to let you guys be aware of that. So I think it would be fantastic. And I think just even, and hope we could do that something through, the other sistering cities and neighborhoods throughout here. But I thought that's a great opportunity. And I think that's something, that I hope we can kind of pursue and, continue that discussion. So that's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
Ms. Giovanelli.
I just have a couple things as well. First of all, I just wanted to say it's nice to see Mr. Ramirez up on the dais with us over here. We never had that before, really, and so welcome to a seat at the table. And second of all, one of the questions I had someone contact me regarding. The maintenance department is asking, someone in the maintenance department is asking, told some of the maintenance people that they were going to have to wear masks. It was going to be mandated. So I think that, I don't know how that message can get back out, that the status regarding, mandating masks could, be reiterated back to the district. I don't know. So.
Well, it starts here. There is no plan to mandate masks. I will certainly have the conversation with Mr. Stevens, who is our Chief Operations Officer, who will carry that information both to the maintenance and construction and facilities departments to make sure they're aware of what the expectations are. There are no mandatory masks in the school district of Lee County.
It's optional if someone wants to, feel more comfortable wearing a mask, obviously. So, but I didn't think there would be a mandate, and that was the words that were used to them. Also, one of the things, since you brought up the auditor position, I was curious regarding, we received a letter regarding from some of the local delegation regarding an audit being done, and are we going to be considered part of that audit, and what's the status on that regarding that letter? Dr. Benier. Thank you.
We've read that letter extensively. We're waiting for additional direction. That letter does not require any response at this time from the school district.
Okay. And then the other thing is, I mentioned about transportation in an email because we've got received so many complaints regarding the transportation and some kind of new system that is delaying the buses, or the buses never even showing up. We're getting a lot of that. If there's any way we could get maybe a workshop on that, an update of what's actually going on and the details of how I want to make sure that the community is comfortable and understand that we're working diligently to rectify some of the transportation issues that are ongoing. And yes, I think we're 3 or 4 weeks into school, but I know people are still, their kids aren't getting to school, and their parents are leaving their jobs to take their kids to school. At some point, we're going to cost parents their jobs if they can't, go to work, and their kids can't go to school. So I think it's really alarming, and I want to make sure that the community knows that we're on it. Thank you. Or that you're on
So
it.
to the board members in the community, the board received an update last evening. I am now getting weekly updates as I requested. I did get one last week, but I held it till we could have two weeks of comparison related to both to the morning and afternoon runs. The standard for transportation, after meeting again with them at 7:30 this morning, is that they would like to see the on-time percentages for all of our schools to rise to above 95%. We're always going to have avenues of challenge each and every day. Not every, and rightfully so, not every bus driver comes to work every day. Sometimes people get sick, sometimes they have a family obligation, and if they are entitled to leave, they're expected to take that and to take care of their personal business. And but that does put us in a bind. We are looking at everything to solve our transportation, including looking at some new solutions. I don't know that I want to announce them here tonight because they are very much in the making. But I think we have to find a way to cover uncovered routes. We have to get better into our schools and out of our schools, and that includes enhancing our parent pick-up and drop-off lines and making sure those lines are out of the way of the buses so the buses can be more operationally efficient. And you'll recognize from my email that I'm asking now for a breakdown, not just of the total system, but I want to see a breakdown of high schools on-time percentage, elementary on-time percentage, and middle. That'll give us a better idea rather than a district-wide average of 11% of our buses being late or 20% of our buses being late. And then additionally, we're beginning to highlight those school buildings above 10%, and those students even higher, those numbers higher than that. And that will be a conversation between the Chief Operations Officer, myself, and our Director of Transportation on a weekly basis until we get there. Despite what we're seeing in some of our numbers, though, and I was prepared to announce this tonight, but I will say it here again this afternoon, we are in the process of communicating with the Q and our other nonprofit organizations, like the STARS program, and restoring some of the bus stops closer back to those locations at this board's request. We have said, though, to those community partners, this is a one-year only option. By this time next year, they will have had to find a different business model. But we are not going to bring our students closer to those nonprofit locations at the expense of those students walking back to their neighborhoods. We will drop our students in their neighborhoods, and then if we have remaining students for those programs, then we will bring them closer to their organizations and make sure that they are within a legitimate or more easy walking distance to the locations, but it may not necessarily be door to door. Transportation continues to be a challenge. Middle school proximity is on the horizon. Those types of issues and being able to clear miles out of our middle school schedule will help us as well. But we are utilizing all staff. Mr. Lloyd has plans not only to ensure that those bus drivers who don't normally run a high school run and may start later in the morning, those individuals are being brought forward into the high school runs, and then attempting not to impact the elementaries, because our elementary runs have to start sometimes while the high school runs are still finishing up. So we have a lot of work to do. So I appreciate that, and I think the community expects more from their school system, and we will continue to try to improve our transportation on-time percentage.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. I think it was really important to know that, for the community to know that you're on it, and I knew that, but I just wanted them to hear it as well, because I know there's a lot involved and there's a lot of moving parts. So I really appreciate it. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Trinket.
Thank you. I would like to ask that we can calendar a discussion regarding teacher pay. And I don't know if we need consensus for that, if it gets put in the parking lot. I don't remember when the last time was we had a discussion about what's in the parking lot, so I'm seeing a lot of shaking heads, so if we could calendar that, I would appreciate it. And as part of that, through the chair to Dr. Bernier, it would be helpful for me to have the following information. What is the teacher shortage on a comparative basis in districts that have additional millage dedicated to staff pay? So I know that there are some districts that have additional millage for the arts or additional millage for whatever, but there are also some districts that are just for staff pay. So for example, north and south of us, those are for staff pay, and there've got to be other districts across the state. It would be helpful to see if those teacher and staff shortages are lower from a data perspective to inform that conversation. And then I agree, public meeting with Clerk Carnes, if we can come to an agreement on that. I've had a discussion with him, and I think that the role that he can play in the district is a good one, and in my opinion an exciting one, but I think it needs to be a public discussion with Clerk Carnes. And then finally, I'd like to, I was at a meeting this morning at Bonita Springs High School with the Bonita Estero Association of Realtors, and when they asked me why a school was not being built in Estero, and I told them that the projections did not come to bear and that not enough children were moving in down on Corkscrew, they laughed and guffawed and were not happy with my response. So I'd like to reiterate my request for a community presentation in Estero to explain why the elementary and middle school is not needed. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. I really don't have too much. I wanted to say congratulations to Ms. Dupree Bruno. She completed her education law and will be turning that into the Florida bar. So congratulations on doing that. I know you've been really trying to work hard to get that certificate. And also to congratulate you and your team, because I know we forgot all about it, and I have to apologize because I don't even know what magazine it was, but you were all in that magazine. So it was great for the district that you were all in that. And could you please say if you don't mind, what the name of that?
Thank you, Ms. Jordan. The school board attorneys were featured in the Register magazine in August.
Thank you. So that was all of the team, and I just really thought that was great that we were shined on. So thank you for that. And then also I want to thank the maintenance and all the staff who made sure that all the buildings were secured, because I know that came out and said, don't forget to thank them, so I'm not forgetting to thank all the people. There's so much to thank people for, and we forget. That's just like walking and saying hello to somebody. We need to make sure that we're thanking the people who deserve to be thanked. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan.
So I'm going to do some thank yous also, or compliments. I want to compliment the ESOL department on their last 2 weekly board updates, which were a considerable improvement over previous versions. And actually, I'm just talking about my 3 compliments are about the board update, or actually 2 compliments, 1 question. Also, I thought that the social work services report of August 25th was really informative. And so I don't know how tedious it is or burdensome it is for you to provide that information, but it really helps to see, what your focus is and what kind of impact you're trying to have. So I thank you for the people who are providing the board weekly update information. I will say that I still don't understand the recruiting and hiring weekly statistic report. I have tried all different kinds of ways to make the numbers work, and I don't understand it. Just putting that out there. Now, I want to talk about something that I brought up at the last, or a question I asked at the last board workshop. And I'm going to read it because it's hard for me to keep it straight in my head. When I asked a question about the $111 million cost of Riverdale High School in our August 16 workshop, Superintendent Bernier responded by suggesting a variety of issues and unique challenges attributable to renovating and remodeling Riverdale High School. He then proceeded to talk about the role of principals and communities, describing scope creep and project change orders as a problem with school leadership and community involvement in this project and other construction projects. Assuming, on my part, that the variety of issues and unique challenges were well known by the completion of Phase 1 Riverdale High School, I was hearing Superintendent Bernier suggest that the Riverdale High School community-led mission creep was a significant factor in revised project costs. So I went back through board meetings 2020 to date to trace the revolution of the Riverdale High School project, hoping to gain a better understanding of the remodel-renovate project. Well, what I found suggests that while Superintendent Bernier may be concerned with mission creep, the board needs to be concerned about 3 operational areas involved in construction planning as we move forward the school renovations and remodeling. Let's talk about this project. The project cost of $41.5 million was estimated in 2021. The Phase 1 budget was improved in April 21 without amendments to the total projected cost. In September of the same year, the Capital Improvement Plan 21-26 noted a budget challenge with the project, and then in December updated that project to $60 million, a 36% increase attributable to inflation. The board approved Phase 1 cost increases in February, and I've got a typo here, I think June of 22. This year in March, the board approved Phase 2, the total project cost of $70 million, a 67% increase over the 20 estimate, and a 17% increase over the 21 estimate, which was supposed to include inflation. Less than 5 months later, the 24-33 Capital Improvement Plan projected a $111 million cost, a $41.5 million or 58% increase in 5 months. A principal and school leadership and community expectations cannot account for 41.5 projected cost increase. at one point referenced in the September 21 capital project update, 4 options for Riverdale High School were under consideration. A radical change and others along a spectrum of needs, wants, and options. Apparently, the Riverdale community was very engaged in the options conversation. Ultimately, the decision to proceed with the current plan, which has been revised, as I've stated, was made by the superintendent in a cabinet meeting, and planning continued. At no time was the board given information, in my case, about decisions being made within planning and the cabinet about the spectrum of the Riverdale High School remodel and renovation options and costs. So we have an internal problem with respect to planning, construction, and contracts and school leadership, or an external problem with, allowing communities to drive our goals, contracts. And I'm listening to, having conversations about NNN with the community, and I know when we did Bonita High School, we did the conversations with the community. I think we have a real problem, and we have got to put in policy something that when there are options that are, frankly, based on what I've learned, significantly different in terms of how can I put it, but not only cost, but simply renovation and remodel options. I think we have got to have something that gets the board involved earlier in this process. And again, this goes back to my concern with, and I should make it very clear, that Superintendent Bernier was here at the tag end for the last approval of the project cost. So this is not something that has come up within the last year. This is something that has transpired over a period of time with a lot of turnover in staff, in operations, and in planning. But I think this suggests we need to have a way, or we need to have expectations in terms of what is transpiring over a period of time with a cost. Because yes, it is the superintendent's responsibility, but budget and accountability for taxpayer dollars is our responsibility. So I'm just putting it out there. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you. That's actually some information I did not know.
Oh,
so I appreciate that. I'm sure the superintendent heard that.
I've heard it loud and clear. I just want to make sure that we're clear on one thing, and Ms. Morgan's timeline is correct. The decision between an A, B, and C or D option was conducted under a prior superintendent with a prior cabinet.
Absolutely.
And I just want to make sure that when option D, the most expensive option, was chosen to bring forward to you, I don't know how or why or the level of conversation that those individuals engaged with the board to ensure that you were well informed. Up until that point, I 100% agreed, and I agree that that decision occurred, but I just wanted to make it really clear that that decision to accept option D, which was with all of the options for Riverdale, which included inflationary costs, community input, principal input, and contractors' work independent, we believe, of some of our own construction people, where contractors said, yes, we could do certain things. Contractors will always say, yes, we can do certain things. They'll do that in your own home. We're happy to replace that countertop. They just will tell you later how much that countertop's going to cost to replace. So there was a decision made.
That was 2021.
And I think there's some aspect of the $111 million price tag at this point that I think the board would like to maybe further discuss. But the reality is, anyway, I just want to make sure that I guess my original point of weighing in is I wanted to make sure that discussion about various options occurred in a former superintendent's and a former cabinet to that extent as well.
And that is absolutely true. That was 21, 22 at the latest, well before you were here. You said something and I was going to make a comment and I've forgotten. Oh, I know we have to proceed. I mean, I'm not saying, I know we have to proceed. What I'm saying is this experience is a cautionary note to this board, particularly as we embark on more renovation remodels, and just
Right, NNN is another one. NNN is just getting started, potentially getting started. But I think this board has already been accepting of leadership regarding around things like private-public partnerships, which have potentially put a new model of construction out into the community where buildings can be built faster, less expensive. They're still quality learning environments, right? But they may not have all the things, because every job when it's finished should be looked at again for cost savings. So upcoming, September, probably in October, I've directed Larry Stevens to have a post-construction meeting surrounding Amana Serra. We won't change anything about the way Amana Serra was built. We will leave Amana Serra alone. But when we build that prototype again, are there any additional cost savings that we could find in how we built that school, still building it to the appropriate standard, the right square footage, and making sure that in the case of Amana Serra, it's also a hurricane shelter, that as we build school buildings like that, are there other cost savings we can find in other locations? And I can assure you there are always cost savings in any building project, but you want to temper that with making sure we have world-class environments. So again, I think the point is well taken, and this particular situation, as well as other situations, have been a mantra of mine when discussing with our construction division and with my cabinet about once we design a building and we say this is how it's going to be built, and that's different than Riverdale, but if we're building a brand new school building and we have a prototype is going up. We're not going to move a wall, we're not going to take a 1,000-foot square area and turn it into 2,000 square feet, right? We build a prototype for a reason. There are cost savings associated with sticking to a plan, knowing exactly what we're going to build, and we have a responsibility to do that. I'm not hopeful. I have a plan to ensure that this doesn't come before you again, but I think we can certainly have, as we review the capital improvement plan again, remember, we just brought the first draft. So as the draft comes back, there's another avenue for us to go into a deeper discussion. Sorry to take so much time.
Yep. Thank you. Ms. Patrica.
Thank you for that. That was very enlightening and eye-opening. I appreciate that you put that timeline together. And I just want to add that with an elected superintendent coming in, those changes to policy would be really important. So as part of that discussion, Dr. Bernier, I know this isn't your thing, perhaps it's Attorney Dupree-Bruno, suggestions for policy changes can be made during that meeting, and we can move forward from there. But thank you, I really appreciate it.
All right, Ms. Giovanelli.
So, yes, thank you, Ms. Morgan, for bringing that back to our attention, because if we're going to go out and ask for more money to pay teachers, we have to be physically conservative, and that is not. So it's really important that we really dot our I's and cross our T's, so thank you.
All right. We're talking about a little bit about auditors and things. I just want to give a report. I was going to give it later, but I'll go ahead and give it right now on the hiring of an external financial auditor. As you know, this year the state is auditing all our financials, and we had our first meeting on the 22nd of the selection committee, and what we did there was just basically go over with procurement all the qualifications. And we tightened up several of them to make sure, for instance, having a team and making sure the team is there for the whole length of the contract. You know, sometimes these firms will promise you something and then later you get the subs coming in. But it was very good, and they will be doing, like I say, the state's doing the financial auditing this year. The board hires will do it for the next 2 years, and then the state again, because they do it every 3 years, and then the firm we hire will do it again for an additional 2 years. So it's really a 5-year contract, but they're doing 4, because the state's in the middle there. It doesn't start till next year. So we will have auditing for the next 6 years of all our financials, you know, once whoever we select, starting this year with the state. So that's something that's going on. The public doesn't realize that we are audited financially. Not that we couldn't be audited more or deeper in certain areas. I wanted to make up that. Our audit committee, we had to reschedule this month's meeting. When we voted to just do audio recordings and things like that, we didn't realize that someone actually has to be here so the public can participate. So we postponed that meeting because we were all doing it on the phone. Then we realized that unless someone knew to zoom in or something like that, it's just very difficult. So we're working on that to make it, because we did not want to exclude anyone. And the one thing I did want to mention is the master board certification. All the paperwork is in, the check request is in. The problem is we have to have a 7-hour initial start, and finding a date that works for all of us and the superintendent, it is difficult. So we have staff working on that, and we'll let you know as soon as we pick one. It will not be in September because the person there cannot do it in September. Carol Cook does it for the FSBA. There you go. Anyway, so we're working on dates, and if it comes out that there's one date that, for instance, I can be, but everybody else is available, you know, I'll ask myself if I can do something different. And I may be asking one of you all the same thing for the whole thing. And I think most of us would try to do everything we can to do that. So anyway, that's all I have to say there. Attorney Dupay, do you have anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
So listening to you talk about how difficult it is, given that this coming year, we don't have the elected superintendent. We have okay, never mind.
Okay.
Disregard.
I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
Where you were going anyway.
Yep.
Attorney Bruno.
I have nothing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any further comments?
Just a quick note, I received some information during the workshop. The Listen initiative that was recently canceled has been rescheduled. I'll do it again tonight. That Listen initiative is reset for September 27th of 2023, be located here. So I just wanted you to be aware that Mr. Ramirez and Dr. Duncan have already been working to get a reestablished date for that, September 27th.
Okay, I do have one further announcement before we adjourn. I just found out that Legislative Day will be October 30th. So our dates will all work well in there. So, all right, seeing no other business, our next meeting will be at 5:05 tonight, a special meeting on the budget. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. And the time is